Hi everyone, today I'm going to do a book discussion on the book by Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Speaking for Myself. To summarize, I really enjoyed this book. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is clearly a genius at controlling the news cycle, spinning stories, and handling the media. In this book, she really does deliver what everyone wants, an insider's account into the Trump administration. And I also enjoyed that this book reviewed some of the highlights of the Trump presidency. Now it's, 2020, and there's been so many big stories that it was very fun to sit and remember some of them. It was very nostalgic. I especially loved remembering how Pelosi canceled Trump's State of the Union address because of the government shutdown, and in retaliation, he canceled her trip to Afghanistan. It was hilarious. They had boarded buses. They were on their way and had to turn around. It was very funny. One question I had in mind while reading this book was how much of what Trump says is determined by focus groups. How much of what Trump says is filtered by his public relations team. I have no doubt that he closely monitors poll numbers, but it seems from this book that his tweets are as unpoliced as people say they are. And I'm guessing that his briefings with the press are obviously rehearsed, but he ventures outside of that rehearsal a surprising amount. There were a number of examples that gave me this idea. When Schumer was trying to blame him for the shutdown, and he just went ahead and said, yeah, I'll shut down the government because I'm not getting the wall. That statement didn't go through focus groups, surveys, or rehearsals. Or when he told Pelosi that she was a Catholic and that the Vatican had a big wall around it. That was another example. Or when he was the one to dictate to Sarah Sanders the explanation of why he canceled Pelosi's trip. These were all instances where he dictated the narrative. A lot of the crazy statements he makes are from him. Another thing that I found interesting was that from Sarah Sanders' description, Ivanka is pretty much involved in everything. She is very much an insider into the Trump administration. These last 4 years, I've imagined Kushner overseas working in the Middle East and Ivanka working on women's issues somewhere else. But my abstract impression from this book is that Ivanka is very much involved in the important meetings. Sanders said that Rex Tillerson didn't like this nepotism, and, Ben Garrison and Ann Coulter certainly don't either. I found this fact very surprising. At one point, before Sarah Huckabee Sanders resigned, a rumor came to Trump that she was thinking of running for governor. And when she resigned, Trump advised her to declare her political intentions right away, as early as possible. And Trump tried to convince her this was good campaign advice and that he knew what he was talking about. He was president after all. This detail put in my mind something I hadn't thought about before. Had Trump, all these decades, been studying how to become president? While you and I watch TV ads and news reports from Jimmy Carter or Reagan or Howard Dean or Kerry, was Trump also watching this stuff at home, trying to pinpoint the science of becoming president? Another observation I have from reading this book is that now I wonder if McEnany is capable of doing her job. Sarah Huckabee Sanders couldn't do her job with 3 little kids at home to take care of. How is McEnany's experience going to be any different? And recently, Amy Coney Barrett got nominated to the Supreme Court too, and she has 7 kids. This is probably the opposite message Sanders hopes readers will walk away with. So let's move on to some of the rapid-fire highlights from the book. First off, I noticed Sarah described in detail what people were wearing in multiple occasions in the book. That was a lot of describing what people were wearing. Sarah also corroborated the General Raising Cane story, which is absolutely crazy to me. When it first came out, reporters were speculating this was a made-up lie. They were saying there was no General Raising Cane, but the story turned out to be true. He really did visit Iraq for Christmas, as everyone knows. And Trump really did have a meeting with the generals and national security officials. And there really was a General Cane nicknamed Raisin, who told him they could eradicate ISIS in a couple weeks, and they ended up doing it. Not in a couple weeks, but a couple months. I peeked at the Bolton book, the new Bolton book, and even though he has another interpretation of what happened, he also corroborated the General Raising Cane story. That's so interesting. The narrative is that Raising Cane's suggestion was that instead of just attacking from a temporary military base in Syria, they should attack ISIS from Iraq as well. That sounds to me like I'm missing something. It's just very simple. It's a very simple explanation, and I think there's more to the story, and it would be interesting to learn about that. There must be more to that. I mean, their estimate was that they would defeat ISIS in 2 years, and thanks to this advice, they did it in a couple months. The story of how she was hired as senior advisor in Trump's campaign is that she worked in her dad's presidential campaign. When Mike Huckabee dropped out of the race, Trump approached him asking for an endorsement. Huckabee told Trump he couldn't endorse Trump because he had a TV show with Fox and Fox wanted Huckabee to be neutral. So Huckabee offered Trump to add his daughter, Sarah, to his campaign, saying this would send a clear message of endorsement. After Sarah's first appearance in CNN, Trump just wanted her to appear in TV from then on. Sarah didn't really have a background in communications, but that ended up becoming her role. Now, my impression from hearing this was that, as she explained it, her initial role was to show a Christian woman as the spokesperson for Trump. That is what she said the campaign wanted initially. I do believe she soon proved herself as a very qualified press secretary, but at least at first, initially, her role was to appeal and engage the female Christian demographic. Another factoid, Spicer offered her a job in the White House communications office. Sarah said no, but mentioned she could be deputy in the press office. Here's another little factoid. There's a hilarious part in the book where she says her marriage survived a trial of putting together a kid's bed from IKEA and swore to never do that again. I found it hilarious because it's a well-known meme. I saw it on Reddit a long time ago. The idea that Kia makes couples threaten to break up. I've had that happen. Here's another factoid. Part of her job was to cross-reference and fact-check and prep the president regarding the attendance numbers of the inauguration. Remember how controversial the inauguration numbers were? Trump, on a phone call, asks Sarah if she agreed with his combative use of Twitter. Before she answered, he launched into a story where he described a tweet he thought was a very beautiful tweet. And according to her, by beautiful he meant controversial. Now that's a very insightful little factoid. She said that from day one, Spicer was under a lot of attack. I don't think she could emphasize that enough. Scaramucci was hired in big part to stop leaks, and in an attempt to do this, he threatened to fire everyone except himself and Sarah. Sarah says she suspected most leaks were coming from senior officials as opposed to the clerks and the staff. One day, a story written by David Horsey called Sarah a chubby soccer mom. Nobody, not even her husband, mentioned it, probably not wanting to embarrass her. And then, while doing negotiations in Japan, Trump tried to cheer her up by telling her, that she was tough, she was beautiful, and they were attacking her because she did her job well. That was a heartwarming little anecdote in the book that I know she has mentioned a lot on her book tour. She once accidentally drank Trump's Diet Coke abroad in the Middle East. She was really nervous about it, but eventually she was assured that the cooks always brought extra Diet Cokes for the president. Now this is very insightful insider information kind of stuff. I'm not being sarcastic, you can surmise a lot from this anecdote. She said that they had an initiative in the administration to have Sarah be present in more important meetings. She said she was present more than any other senior official except for Ivanka, Jared, and one other dude. Now this was done to make her job as press secretary easier, so that she could do her job. She had to be present in the meetings. I did get a sense that there is definitely a level of social separation between her and other senior officials, which makes sense, but she did allude to a hierarchy within the administration of important people and not so important people, among the most important people maybe in the world. While Michelle Wolf was roasting Sarah Huckabee, Sarah recalls that she considered a little bit throwing her wine glass at her or walking out. I had no idea that was going on behind her expression. That one line that Mattis read about North Korea, quote, "Because we are not looking to the total annihilation of a country, namely North Korea," end of quote. So that line was written by Sarah Sanders. Mattis told her she was tough and that he wouldn't want to have her job. Sarah Sanders said about John Kelly. So John Kelly was put in charge to bring order into the administration. His first assignment on the job was firing Scaramucci. But about John Kelly, Sarah says that later on Kelly couldn't compromise, and that's why eventually he was kicked out. Trump asked her to add November Rain by Guns N' Roses to the rally music roster and showed her the music video, telling them it was the best music video of all time. So that's a little insight into Trump's music tastes. While meeting, Trump offered Kim Jong-un Tic Tacs, and Kim reluctantly took one. Kim nodded and winked at Huckabee Sanders, And when she told that to Trump and Kelly, they laughed hysterically, and Trump joked that she should take one for the team. I mean, this guy's hilarious. Regarding her getting kicked out of the Red Hen, the owner of the restaurant, the Red Hen, called her a horrible person and kicked her out. And as she walked out, she noticed the owner of the restaurant was trying to unlock her phone to video the encounter. Later, after Sarah and her husband went home, her husband's family decided to voluntarily leave and go eat at the restaurant across the street. They were hungry. The restaurant owner then got a few of her friends together and tried protesting them. It's beyond deranged. So when the second Supreme Court seat opened, Sarah suggested to Trump, she suggested the young conservative mother of 7, Amy Coney Barrett, for Supreme Court nominee. But she told Trump, this is what she said. She said, Kavanaugh might be easier to push through. Now that's so the opposite of what ended up happening, huh? Well, anyways, after the nomination, the accusers came forward, and in anticipation of the hearing, Sarah and others murderboarded Kavanaugh, which is when they role play as the opposition and mercilessly interrogate the person prepping them for a hearing. To get them ready for the hearing, they brought up many accusations. They yelled at him. They called him sexist and whatnot. At one point in the murderboarding, Kavanaugh teared up. Sarah Sanders does emphasize in the book how Democrats have threatened her, yelled at her in the streets, saying she's not fit to be a mother. Reporters have said people should choke her, and the like. I remember reading Katie Tur's book, Unbelievable, and she also had a reoccurring complaint about how, when Trump has the rallies and Trump points at the media during the rallies, so the Trump supporters usually yell and swear at the media. Well, Katie Tur had this experience where she has a mob of people swearing and yelling at her. So, and she also kind of emphasized that in her book, titled Unbelievable. I just found that interesting, how there's similar stories, from both sides. When Trump was exonerated from the Russian collusion investigation, Trump said America was the greatest place on earth, the greatest country on earth. And I think that little detailed, that little anecdote that happened can often be overlooked. I think that anecdote shows that he was genuinely afraid about it, even though he never showed it. But I believe because of that comment, he must have been afraid at some point. According to Sarah Sanders, Trump treated her well, but there were also instances when he yelled and cursed at her. Then again, Trump yelled and cursed both men and women, so that's equality in the workplace, I guess. It also sounded like people in the administration often took notice of the president's mood. That was a reoccurring thing they would bring up. If he was in a good mood, their job sounded like it'd be easier for that day. Sarah told of an anecdote where during Christmas, Trump dropped an F-bomb, speaking about Chuck Todd. Sarah Sanders' 6-year-old daughter was in the room, and so Sarah reminded the president, Mr. President, there's a 6-year-old. She's 6. And then Trump said, oh, shit, Well, sweetheart, it was only a matter of time. Welcome to the real world. Sarah wrote about a visit they all took to the Arlington Cemetery for Memorial Day. And I found that interesting because I was there. I saw them all there. And so that's the picture you're looking at now. At one point in the book, Sanders claimed Democrats wanted more immigrants so that they could buy their votes with free government programs and secure a permanent majority. I don't think even Trump has been this blunt. I think that's something that everyone knows but nobody wants to say out loud, and reading that makes me think, wow, they get it. Sarah included a hilarious anecdote about the government shutdown. During the shutdown, each network could only send one person to some important event. I can't remember what it was. CNN sent Cuomo. This made Wolf Blitzen and Jake Tapper jealous. Sarah told this to Trump that CNN had only sent Chris Cuomo, and Trump immediately got a kick out of it. He got his secretary to get Jake Tapper on the phone, right that instant, and told Sarah, watch this. He spoke with Jake Tapper and asked him why he wasn't coming. He asked Sarah, do you think we can have Jake come too? And Sarah said, sorry, sir, we could only have one from each network. And Trump responded, sorry, Jake, we'll have to figure out a way to make it up to you, and hung up. Oh my God, this man is so funny. That anecdote alone, I think, justifies buying the book, Sarah's book. There is an anecdote about how Mick Mulvaney told off John Bolton because of a motorcade incident. The details of the incident aren't really important. The important thing is that John Bolton had done many things that seemed selfish and arrogant to the rest. According to Sarah, Bolton often acted like he was the president. And he even tried oftentimes to push an agenda contrary to the president's own agenda. When Trump tweeted his goodbye announcement for Sarah, he turned on the news and started counting the seconds it would take Fox News to have a breaking news alert about it. Now that's a very interesting insight into what Trump does on the other side of his tweets. Trump told Sarah that he believed hers was the record. It was 20 seconds between tweet to screen, and he believed 20 seconds was the new record. And it really makes you wonder how many other incendiary tweets Trump has sent out with the TV on. Sarah said that they picked a replacement for her before her last day, which was confusing because I remember Trump took over and McEnany didn't come on until a while later. But Sarah meant Stephanie Grisham, who was press secretary after Sanders but before McEnany. But according to Wikipedia, she was the first White House press secretary in American history to hold no press conferences. At one point in the book, she described Josh Raphael, her co-worker, as a liberal, aggressive, foul-mouthed Jew from New York City. And it was just a little funny to read that. I saw some reporters run with that. Obviously, I don't think there should be any outrage about that. They're clearly good friends. And I wouldn't be surprised that he called himself those things in front of her or something. It just caught me off guard. It was like that Louis C.K. bit about the word Jew. Anyways, she finished the book with a story about herself visiting a Holocaust museum and writing in the guestbook comment section, quote, "Why didn't somebody do something?" Now, remember, this was a Holocaust museum. And made a sort of a call to action to always fight back against the evils of this world. And I absolutely agree with her sentiment. But everybody knows, and I know that she knows, that the, you're complicit if you don't stop evil slogans are usually used against Trump. And not to speak of the Nazi accusations. They're always made about Trump. But obviously she knows that. It is clear to me that Sarah Huckabee Sanders is a genius at marketing and controlling the news cycle. I'm wondering if this is another attempt at spinning Trump's image. Don't get me wrong. I know her words are sincere, obviously. I'm just wondering if this is, one of those attempts where the assertion is so shocking it's easier to believe. Now, it could also be that she's trying to virtue signal her own personal staunch anti-Nazi sentiment she's had since she was a little girl. Or, what's more likely, I guess, is I could just be reading too much into it. And it could just be a fun little innocent memory that she's always cherished. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. So there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed the summary and discussion of that amazing book by an amazing woman, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Next, I'm going to review a book called The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. I'm also going to be discussing it, so please subscribe.